Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you here for the first episode of the DIH Talks. My name is Ivan. I'm support officer. Sorry. Oh, I heard I was frozen. I'm really sorry for that. So my name is Ivan. I'm support officer at the Digital Innovation Hub. Today's topic is cybersecurity for manufacturers. Best practices and strategies to adopt. And please welcome our speaker, Dominique Goguet, head of the National Cybersecurity Competence Center at the Luxembourg House of Cybersecurity. And just one thing before we begin, I would like to bring your attention to the question tab in the chat. Feel free to drop your question there anytime, and we will address them in the Q&A at the end of the session. And now I give the word to you, Dominique.
Thank you very much, Ivan. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. As Ivan mentioned, I'm Dominique Goguet. I'm the head of the National Cybersecurity Competence Center here in Luxembourg. We are really in charge of supporting the ecosystem in Luxembourg, especially XMEs. Together with List Innovation, we have a project really focused on the manufacturing sector. And today's presentation or talk that we have today really focus on the observation that we've seen the past year running this program. The interaction things we've seen interacting with the different manufacturers. And the objective for me today is really to share some of the risks, some of the observations, and share some of the best practices that can be adopted to minimize, to some extent, the risk profile and to address some of the risks. We all know the challenge that the manufacturing sector is facing today. It's a global challenge. I've seen it in the SMEs, I've seen it in big companies. They are sharing similarities in the same risks and challenges. Is a sector that we all know that is not really familiar with any, does not have a risk or cybersecurity culture. In recent years with digitalizations, Industry 4.0, there's quite exposure, I would say, or exposure to cyber attacks. And this sector needs to be I would say educate or share things that we've seen from the IT world that we can share, best practice that we can share with the OT world as well. So that will be really the focus and the scope of the presentation I will share today. I will start by sharing some threat intels, right? Threat intel that we've observed from last year and early this year. We are in Feb, but we already seen some cybersecurity attack really targeting the sector. Just to say that when we're talking about security attacks today, as you say, is not a time of if I will be attacked, but when. So that in that sense, everyone, including the manufacturing sector, need to be alert. Management needs to be aware of cybersecurity risk and address them right. Recent attack we see Schneider Electric, that some of you know from the sector, which is a leading automation energy management, recently faced ransomware attacks, right? The same for EMA from the UK. Only this year, I've seen already two giant global leader in the manufacturing industry or manufacturing engineering industry being hit by cyber attacks in the UK. So that should already give an alert, even for the small one, that we need really to understand that we are exposed there and to put in place controls and to allocate budget, right? That's some of the challenges that I've seen exchanging with people from the sector, uh, that convincing management and allocating budget is quite a challenge. So it's important that if global leaders are being hit by attacks, it is important that the SMEs and the small one that we have today in Luxembourg need to also adopt some level of security controls. Last year, we have a manufacturing sector in Belgium also that faced attack. Similarly, attack happened in Spain and in Luxembourg. Even though it's things that we don't see often in the news, we in terms of our services, we did see a lot of attacks. Some of that are public. That happened a few years ago. Cobolus, was even the news that they faced serious cyber attack that affect their operation for few weeks, and from that the impact was 500,000 at least. That's what was declared. Last year during the holidays, we have some manufacturing attack here in Luxembourg that face DDoS attack, for example. And this DDoS attack extend to a week and bringing them to some serious impact. So, as said, it's important that the threat landscape that we've seen today to be prepared, to have controls in place, and to be aware that cybersecurity attack are not only targeting the manufacturing, not the financial sector or any sector that are known to be exposed from the financial to the asset management or banks, but manufacturing sectors, especially SME in manufacturing sectors as well, are being today the target. I'll share some statistics that shows clearly that today there's a shift in target from attackers, so where manufacturing sector is really a target. And from this report that from ENISA, the type of threat that's seen being exploited or being used against all sectors, we have seen a lot of ransomware. We've seen ransomware attack in Luxembourg as well, affecting not only financial but manufacturing sector. There's a malware, social engineering, right? Denial of service. We've seen various DDoS attack targeting not only state infrastructure, but even private institutions that are in business here in Luxembourg. We've all heard sometimes last year where some of the national state websites were not available because of DDoS attack on those infrastructures, on those websites. And again, similar apply to SMEs in the manufacturers today, where we've seen few DDoS attack targeting the supply chains, where we are talking today of NIS2, where some manufacturing sectors, some manufacturing companies are also in scope, meaning that they not only they need to ensure their own security, but they also need to ensure that their suppliers have some level of security, because vulnerability or a threat, not almost a threat, a vulnerability within a supply chain can affect at the end your own operations. So it's important that we take that also in consideration, right? And a recent report from the NISA also show, as I was saying, in 2002, the report shows that the shift from target is not anymore financial sector, right? Here you can see manufacturing sector is quite leading. Just to emphasize the fact that the number of attacks that we see globally or even in Europe are there's a shift from the financial sector to the manufacturing sector. The reasons are simple, because we're talking about industry 4.0. And because is not a culture for the manufacturing sector to to have security control. There's no regulations, so there's no, at least regulation quotes, firm regulation as a financial sector. So often the sector is not keen to put in place controls. We have a question of legacy system that they need to live with. So all these parameters make this sector very vulnerable and easy target for these attackers. So it's a sector that we need, if you are operating within that sector, you need to understand today that you are one of the first targets today for attackers or hackers for as an easy target to get either ransomware so that they can get financial gain or thief of intellectual properties. So again, the sector, we need to have in place controls. Yeah, this is what I explained earlier. Again, the manufacturing sector is shown here. And now we need to understand priorities, right? When we're talking about IT, we're talking about confidentiality, integrity, and availabilities, right? When we are in IT, that is, if we are talking about OT infrastructure, we need to understand priorities. And for the sector, availability is key and safety is first. We want our operation systems, our production systems to be available to continue operations. And in case there's an incident and you stop, there's a huge impact or there's a huge financial impact on your service and your productions. So for manufacturing sector is important to understand the priorities where availability first here are first and physical harms, right? System failures are very important as compared to the IT world where we're talking about data. Because yes, again, in the manufacturing sector, we do have data as well, but it's more uh, seen or keen in the IT world than the OT. So we need to understand what our priority are, what our risk profile are, and what we need to protect, right? And especially that some of the equipment in the manufacturing sector are very expensive, ensuring that there's no security hazard or there's no incident that can be uh, physically impacting these devices or equipment is also important. We're talking about here cybersecurity or security in general, but not to ignore physical security as well. Right? So this is a key and very important aspect or priority to understand when we're dealing or we're pushing our security strategy internally. And as in the IT world, I think it's similar in the OT world. Knowing your assets is a first steps to putting in place controls because you cannot, as we say, you cannot protect things that we don't know. I understand the challenge because been working with some of the manufacturing sector in Luxembourg. There's a challenge where some do not know all the assets because of legacy, because of some of the system that have been there for ages, and the complexity of the infrastructure is a challenge to understand or to do a proper asset inventory. Again, even there's a challenge, it's important to start from somewhere. At least have an inventory of the asset that you can identify within your network. Your plant is important. And again, if there's other controls that you can put to protect some of the assets that you are not able to identify, then you can put those controls. But at least know some of the key assets that you have within your infrastructure. So keeping an asset inventory is the first step in understanding your risk profile first and understanding the type of controls that you need to put in place to protect those assets. If you are not aware of your assets, it becomes very challenging to protect them. Right. So today, having an asset inventory, it doesn't mean that you need to have the very sophisticated uh, software. It can be an Excel where you keep track of your assets, the versions, the last update you did, where is it located, the logical flow. So keeping a record of all this is very important in managing your risk profile. Right? Yes. So I mentioned risk. And the question is, in the term of cybersecurity, is it possible to quantify risk? Is a question. And the next slide is to understand what is risk. I put it down so that everybody can see. Uh, and let's say you're crossing a road, right? And there's a car coming, but if you are not vigilant or you are not paying attention, you can get hit by the car and the impact can be a head problem, right? So we define risk as a product of vulnerability, threat, and impact. It can be in some cases where people even to put their key under the door. And if you don't pay attention and the thief sees that vulnerability can exploit and take away some of your goods. Okay. And here I'll touch some of the risk scenarios, right? Phishing attack, we've seen it not only in the financial institutions, but we've seen also in the manufacturing sector. Is one of the first attack vectors being exploited. Here we're referring to the women factor, where social engineering is used on your employees to have either to have access to critical informations or to have access to your assets, some of your key informations, and this can have financial impact. Maybe you're having intellectual property that give you leads on your in your sector or in your area. Losing that intellectual property can have very serious impact on your business. So that can be uh, key that here we're talking about how you train your people, how you educate them. Awareness is key, not only people working directly in the plant, but also the management. That's why you can secure budgets to implement controls to protect your infrastructure. Ransomware, you've seen it in manufacturing sector, you've seen it across all over. So it's important to have to understand those risks that the sector also face today and to put in place controls, right? Later on, I'll share some of the best practice that can be put in place to address some of these risk scenarios. Denial of service, as I mentioned earlier. We've seen such an attack in Luxembourg. Uh, that impacts quite few operations here in Luxembourg, and is an attack that is continuous in going. We have seen it, so it's important for you to be aware uh, to have controls in place to really protect you and your infrastructure, to ensure that when you have such attack, you have control in place, right? Internal threats, malicious users, malicious employees that are not happy with management, for example, can be a source of attack where they leak critical assets as informations or give access, remote access to malicious bad actors. That is important to take all this in considerations when you put in place your risk registry. Today, again, in terms of these two, risk management is key. So I would really advise you to just have a very basic approach where you keep a risk, where you put in place, just keep a record of your risk. You understand your risk profile, uh, so that you can be able to manage it. Because not to you, if you're not aware of your risk profile and your risk appetite, it becomes very challenging to really manage your risk, and then you are exposed to various cyber incidents. But in terms of human factor, it's similar to the IT world. We've seen cases where an insider, operator, want to get revenge on management for an incident. So he gave, he was laid off, but his assets were not revoked, and this guy was able to still have access to the infrastructure and exploit some of the vulnerability that he known when he was there, and which really impacts the operation of the entity. Even if it's not the case, understand that, as we said, women can be or is the weakest links in security, where if they are not well trained, if there's no control to limit the access, here we're talking about access control, where there's no educations, where they know what to do in case of incident. So it's very important to consider human factor in your cybersecurity strategy. What you do, you have to put in place training and awareness program for all your employees, from management to even the cleaning lady working in the organizations. We've seen cases where people within the organization that are considered not involved or in operation on managing infrastructure, so they were not following trainings. And what happened? There's a lady that was having a pen drive and wanted to get a video or stuff from one of the colleagues, and then that was a way to really infiltrate because it was affected and affected the whole infrastructure, part of the infrastructure, fortunately for them, and that's affect the operation for some times. So educating all the people working in the company on cybersecurity risk and best practice to adopt when facing phishing attack, when doing some activity, any activity that involve IT or any computer management is very important. So it's key to really train everyone, management, to be aware of the current risk profiles and the needs to put in place controls in terms of cybersecurity. I understand that is a culture thing, especially in the manufacturing sector, but it's important to start from somewhere. And through these trainings and that having to understand that what is phishing, what is spare phishing, some of these things that are very important to share it for your women or the employee to understand it. That what is phishing, what is spare phishing, to know that what they need to do in case they receive an email that they were not expecting, or in case of an email or a campaign that they receive that's saying that they want some price. That's some of the things that we've seen. We've seen campaigns in Luxembourg where people are lured in either receive an award or a credit from a bank, or getting their CNS card. We've seen such phishing attack within the ecosystem. So it's very important to educate your personnel, to be aware of such attack, and to educate them on this type of attack, and to be aware of what to do in case of this, right? And how to report it, either to report to the IT management team or to the OT, the team in charge of managing the plant, is very important. And for management, often what we've seen is a spear phishing, right? Targeting management, where they are aware that they are bidding for a contract, and people that are bad actors are able to exploit that, saying that you've won the contract that we bid, and it's very important to change, to be aware of what to look in email, to know when it's a trustworthy email or not. We have a solution here that we share with the ecosystem, Spamby. If you don't use it, I really encourage you to use it. Is a plugin that you install in your browser that can notify in case you receive an email that is malicious and that is known share within the network. So I really encourage everyone to have tools to support the training and the awareness, right? Like Spamby is free, way to deploy it, right? Yeah, as I mentioned in my previous example, this is social engineering that we've seen where someone leave an USB in a company where a malicious, it was not just an ordinary USB, but filled with malwares. And if your employee or staff is not educated, is not aware, often people just take the USB and connect to the computer to see what is on it. It's human nature. We are curious, so we want to see what is on it. And that's where education and awareness is very important. Since employee are your first line of defense to some extent, it's very important to educate them, right? Education. I will emphasize on that because often most of the attack we've seen, the entry point is very women, right? And to one of the controls that can be put in place, or some of the controls that can be put in place in that sense, is to block USBs. And to some extent, allow it when it's needed. Because having USB port opened give attack vectors that not often controls, are not often able to control. So sometimes you can block your USB ports on computers, or you can block USB ports on any plant device in case it's not used. It's not something that we use often. I'll recommend to block the USB port, right? Things we've seen also, remote access or team viewer sessions are often opened, no one attending, because there's a third party that need to have continual access to monitor or to manage one of the component within the plant, one of the devices within the plant. These are some of the are not good practice. But you need to have limited access, really to protect, especially remote control. Have role-based controls for your users. These are some of the technical controls on top of training and awareness that you can put in place, where you have role-based access control, where people do have access when needed and revoke when they don't need those access anymore. And something we've seen also within the sector, or not only manufacturing, but we've seen in general, is people using their personal computers to do work. Recently, we were engaged with one of a company here in Luxembourg, and in the discussion, we were like, okay, the manager was saying, yes, I was able to update the system remotely because I was on vacation. And I said, okay, which computer you do use? I use my personal computer. That's the easy way to have vulnerability infiltrated in your infrastructure. So it's important to educate, right, on not using personal computers, or even put the physical controls, logical control in place where only controls will get to legacy system and protocol later on down my presentation. Only computers or devices that are recognized and known by the company should be able to connect to the infrastructure. These are some of the controls that you need to put in place on top of educating really your staff. And during the campaign on the strategy of awareness, it's important to recognize people, to appoint someone that is actually in charge of security. These are some of the strategic steps that you can take, where you have somebody in charge of security. This can be the head of IT, or the head of the plant, or somebody that is responsible for ensuring that control or security controls are put in place. Yeah, so here I'm sharing some of the, I would say, best practice that you need to. Often when we're using platforms, we do see these educations. They mean something, and it's important to take them in consideration. When a platform or an application that you use is saying your password is weak, and it's important to address and to make sure that you have a strong password that comply to the requirements of the applications or the tool that you use, so that you have some level of security. Often seen cases where platforms saying it's weak, but people still proceed and accept the risk. These are some of the easy target vulnerability exploitation that we've seen in the wild as well. And also when deploying components, ensure that you change the default password. These are some of the simple steps or actions can be taken can save your time and operation on any incident in the future. These are easy exploitations. Default password before you deploy into production needs to be changed, for example. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, ensure secure remote connections. Understand that in the sector, RD are quite common practice, where RD applications, TeamViewer, or any other RD solution are used for third party to have maintenance on plants, or PLC have maintenance on a component or tool, the solution within the plant. But often these RD solutions are not secure and easy to exploit. So that's why it's even important to have VPN solutions, where you ensure that there's end-to-end encryption or anything that's been shared or communicated between your plant or your infrastructure and the third party that is actually connecting remotely to infrastructure. In case the solution that you have does not there's impossible to put in place direct VPN solutions, just have a jump server or a jump desktop where the third party can access remotely securely, and from there you can access any other component that you would like to access within your plant. As I mentioned earlier, use only authorized devices, not personal computers, while working on-prem or even connecting remotely. Ensure that only authorized computers are able to connect to such communication and monitor, right? Especially in remote controls, when you know there's a remote access, ensure that there's a monitoring in place where you are aware, you can have a log of activity done remotely, and you can see that people are connecting remotely to your infrastructure. This can be easy to identify when there's something going on, that you can take actions, right? And your consultant often I know it's not that obvious to have segregated network, especially in some SCADA systems, but ensure that when a third party is having access, the access is really limited to what he or she need to do. Ensure that the access you provide to that particular consultant does not give him the opportunity or the possibility to access other component within your infrastructure. That's also very important. Yes, we had questions regarding legacy system, right? Legacy system is a known challenge within the sector because some of these devices are very expensive. They're still working, and some you cannot just replace it because there's no component between a component today available to replace. If you want to replace it, you need to change parts or the whole plant. And how do you live with it? That's some of the questions that people have been asking. First, as I've said, identify that there's these are the legacy system, asset management. Know all your legacy systems. Because if there's a system, legacy system there that you don't know, how do you protect it? So first, you need to have a record of all your legacy system, and then, if possible, segregate it. Isolate them within to a very dedicated network where you are able to put some level of controls on top of that legacy system. It can be an asset management, it can be a solution, an IDS or intrusion detection system that you put on top of this so that you are able to see the flow of what we call it, activities, data flows, network activities that goes in and out of this isolated, well controlled network. That can be some of the approach. When it's possible, there's a patch available, you need to patch them, right? In case some understand, some there's no patch, we just need to live with it. So put some control on top by isolating, for example, by putting in place some layers of access controls that you can put in place, right? I'll answer some of the questions at the end so that we have time, right? Yes. Backups, right, is a necessity. It's not only in the IT world, it's also very important to have a regular backups within your OT infrastructure as well. It can be configuration backup, right? In case of ransomware, if you don't have backup, sorry, but you don't have any resource to restore your activity or restore your configurations, right? Or even in case of human error, somebody can just delete a configuration file. So if you don't have backup, so it's very important to have a proper backup strategy in place where you have regular test of the backup and very segment your IT and OT system when it's the backup so that you know the level of security you put in on each of these backups. And when possible, have an air gap backup where you back up to tape, to hard disk, and where you are not storing the backup on the same plant site as the main plant you have. If possible, put the backup on a remote site so that in case of major incident, it can be fire, it can be any other things, the backup is still available. When is it on the same site and there's a fire or there's an incident, kind of part of the system of your infrastructure, the backup is also burned. So having an air gap solution where your backup is remotely stored can be very helpful when putting in place your backup strategy. And again, regularly test your backup to ensure that it's able to is able to restore the backup and is able to restore the states that you back it up, right? So it's important to have this project and if possible encrypt them, right? Have a proper encryption in place where you encrypt the backup, especially I'm talking to air gap solution where you put in your backup offsite to ensure that confidentiality and integrity of this backup. Having an encryption solution can be very helpful. Okay. Yeah, OT service management is something that we have, or there's an ability to have in the IT world. I think it's also relevant in the OT world, where we have a service management in place, right? I mentioned assets, good. Configuration management, right? So how to maintain your configurations, how you regularly back up your configurations files to ensure that you have backup in case of incident, and to track your the configurations on your device and the software versions, right? And to ensure that when there's a vulnerability, you're able to back up. If you don't have this record and there's one vulnerability on your components or device within your plant, because you don't have the information, you don't know who, if you have to back, you need to update or not. But by having proper vulnerability management tool configuration management, you are able to know that this vulnerability is potentially impacting the version that I have in my plant, and I need to implement to either patch or to patch the particular component or device within infrastructure. There's IoT devices that smart component that are today's incorporated in the OT infrastructures, and it's important to ensure that in case of an update, you need to update and track the current status, the versions of these devices that you do incorporate in your network. Again, proper incident management, incident handling, that will reduce drastically your downtime. So it can be just guidelines that people operating within the plant are aware that when there's an incident, I need to report to this. I need to inform this third party, and keeping this defined. You don't need a proper root procedure, but just step-by-step guidelines can be very useful uh, when an incident happened, and that the people, again, human here, are aware of these guidelines, because at the end they are the ones that are going to apply, yes, or implement these guidelines in case of incidents, right? Change management is something that is very we see in the IT world. It's very relevant in the OT as well. When there's a change that need to be done, proper planning, so that by doing a change, you make sure that either first you don't impact downtime, you don't have huge downtime in your operations. Second, you don't uh, bring in other vulnerabilities or open other attack vectors. So proper planning, understanding, doing a proper risk management when planning a change is very important, where you ensure that downtime is reduced, vulnerability is not, there's no new vulnerability through the change, and there's no new attack vectors because of the change. So ensuring that you plan properly your change is key in not only operation level, but security level as well. Okay. Again, supply chain. I think I mentioned this earlier. In terms of these two today, is either you are supplier yourself to a critical infrastructure, we call it essential entity today. You at the end, as supplier, you'll be asked to have some level of maturity in terms of security. And if you are an operator or you are a manufacturing company and you have third parties, your suppliers, it's very important to ensure that they have some level of maturity in terms of cybersecurity, and they understand that their risk profile, and that they put in place control that do not, through the line of the relationship you have with them, impact uh, you directly or indirectly, right? And ensure that you have security clauses within the contract that you sign with these third parties can be very beneficial in terms of incident, in case of incident, in case of legal issues, right? So very important to ensure that you have security clauses. Conduct your due diligence, right? When dealing with OT, dealing with your third parties, right? Your suppliers, conduct due diligence, and to some extent, ask them for audit report, or if they have any certification that they can share that, right? And in terms of access management, it should be a zero trust base where you give them access only to things that they need, as I mentioned earlier. Right? Yeah, smart devices. I've seen it, Industry 4.0 again. A lot of smart devices are now incorporated into the plants, into your network. It's important to understand the risk when getting a smart device that you put in your you install in your infrastructure. Recently, that was last year, we were actually conducting an assessment with one of the manufacturing sector, and during discussions, during the tour of the plant, and we noticed that there's a smart meter that not even the companies, some of the heads or the management is aware of. Okay, this means then that that particular smart meter, if it's because they're not aware, probably possibly that is not protected and is an attack vector, easy attack vector. So understand when you're incorporating or connecting smart devices within in your infrastructure is very important because again, you have by incorporating these devices, there's new attack vectors, and understanding that you need to protect all these attack vectors is key to reduce your risk profile and to minimize the possibility of having an hacker exploiting that vulnerability or attack vectors. Right? This is an example where we have people say just a camera. There's some of these, there are smart cameras that need network connections that is connected to your plant or to your part, the IT part of your plant. And it's very important to understand the risk and the vulnerability that this smart devices pose. If you see in my next slide, in this particular camera, there's a default password. And often what we see is people just install, click, 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 accept everything, and then boom, voila, it's working without changing without changing the remote password. And again, if you easy target, you go to Shardon today, you have a lot of these components within companies that are available where we're able to see this particular smart device is vulnerable that people can exploit. And these are some of easy targets that's because of, I would say, not lack of due diligence, become an easy attack vector being exploited. Yes, I will answer at the end. Yeah, good questions. I like the consortium idea. I think there's Fedil has an Isaac of manufacturing, but again, I think we are really open to such idea to have consortium of manufacturing where you share best practice, and why not to have an Isaac to some extent of that people are able to share vulnerabilities, share incidents through sharing platforms, right? So that because today the hackers community are sharing, they are collaborating. The solution that we know ransom as a service, these are they are really collaborating to because it's a real rich business, rich industry today. And we at the other side, we believe that we also need uh, to share, that when there's an incident that you've seen within your infrastructure, maybe on the next company next to you is also facing the same challenge. Sharing how you address that can be beneficial in another way, right? Yeah, such as again smart devices, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things. These are some of that again linked to smart devices. You need to put control in place. Why not to have a dedicated network for this Internet of Things, where you are able to put controls in place, right? So that there's that the Internet of Things, there's the controls that you are able to manage them well, to have proper access management, uh, uh, proper ideas of vulnerability management in place to this dedicated to these IoT devices, right? So very important to be aware of the risk factors, sorry, the attack vectors involved, and to put controls when dealing with IoT, industrial IoTs. We at LHC, we have an online service through this consortium where you can test the firmware of your IoT device before you put them in productions. So if we have a service that is a testing platform that we can share with you after this presentation, where you upload your firmware, and with our tool, we are able to assess the firmware if there's any vulnerability. Sorry, we are able to notify you on the particular firmware IoT device that you would like to install. Sorry, there's this vulnerabilities and this how to address them. So these are some of the solutions, services that we have within the consortium. Again, there's no charge attached to it, so it's very important to take advantage of such service when you're dealing with industrial IoT or just IoTs, right? Oh, sorry. And we are at the end of our presentations, right? And if there's a key takeaway that I'll leave with you today at this point, right, it's important to have a regular update and patch management, vulnerability management strategy in place. Because of the difficulty we have within the sector, OT system and the legacy knowledge that we have, if possible, let's segregate. Let's have dedicated VLANs for various parts of our infrastructure or network. Human being the weakest link in anything security, important to train, have continuous awareness campaign within organizations, have an incident management plan. It does need to be a very explicit document with all the policy fancy, but just guidelines where people are able to follow when there's an incident, and the contact that people they need to contact, and the instruction they need to do, right? And again, I put it in red. Let's collaborate within the sector where we have an ISAC to some extent that we are able to share threat intels targeting OT, right? Where we are able to share challenges, we are able to share how we address some of those challenges. Probably your solution can be beneficial to other companies as well, and regular backup. In terms of ransomware, uh, human error, this can be very beneficial in restoring your services. Have proper business continuity plans. Again, I put here privacy because some of this we're dealing with some sensitive data. So to be aware of data privacy, right? Uh, and have security measures around your legacy system. As questions, as I said, if it's possible, let's isolate them. Let's have another layer of control on top of these systems. It can be an IDS, intrusion prevention system or detection system. It can be proper access management and other security controls. So I think I will have some few minutes left to answer the questions, right? I'll start from down the question saying that how to ensure right balance between cybersecurity and innovations concerning smart devices. I think there's no, I would say, no challenge there for me, because we can still do innovation in a secure manner. We're talking about smart devices. There's controls that we can put in place to ensure the security of these smart devices. As I mentioned, uh, test the firmware of the devices, ensure that you change the default password, ensure that when there's a vulnerability, there's a patch, we are able to we patch on time these devices, right? Yeah, so there's a question on crisis management on top management, on top for top management. Uh, we have a service here at LHC that we call Home 42, where we simulate various cyber crises, right? Real life, where participants are very immersed in this incident, and they touch cyber crisis, and here we not only focus on technical aspects, but we focus also on the human aspect, how you manage stress. And if you have a top management that you would like to uh, educate or have an awareness session around this topic, do not hesitate to reach out to us. Again, in the context of this L-DIH program, it's possible to have this particular service with no charge. So reach out if you're a manufacturer company out there that would like to do a crisis management exercise for your top management. We have a service for you. Okay. I love the consortium idea, as I say. It's a great idea. I think we are open to that. It will be our pleasure to animate such consortium. In the case of maintenance contract for supplier, that the product supplier take on the role of operator, what the legal changes does this entail for the product supplier? Why, if you can mean, what do you mean by operator? But in general, when dealing with either products or software, it's very important to have your security clauses well defined, where responsibilities are well defined, uh, where if there's a support or maintenance need because we don't have the expertise in-house is also well defined. If the supplier, need to ensure remote maintenance of these particular solutions, ensure that you follow up and that monitoring is in place to ensure that patch or any other uh, uh, controls are done on timely manner, in timely manner, right? But where do you fit? Yeah, I've seen some manufacturing company today using such solutions to address simple challenge because they don't know, or it's difficult to have a proper asset management in place in the sector. Solution like dark trace have been used, where pattern of traffic pattern are monitored, and when there's deviation within that pattern, a notification is an alert is sent to the operator or the management so that they can take actions. Is a challenge. That's just an example of a layer of security based on the challenge that we have with OT infrastructure. It's or endpoint protections. Yes, when it's possible, having an endpoint protections. Just these are some of the layer of security that you can especially put on legacy systems. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any other questions. Um, Okay,
Thank
no
you very
further
much
question. Thank you very
for
much for
the
your time.
insightful
It was really
presentation, and a big thank
pleasure.
you to all of you for joining. Stay tuned for the next DIH Talks on March 14th, where we talk about training offers. As you can see, there is a QR code that brings you directly to the registration page. And yes, so see you next time and have a great day.
Yeah. So on the link, Ivan, you can share the testing platform link that you can share with the rest of the team, the participant that would like to interact with the testing platform. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of the day. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.